Hello and welcome back to Everybody Loves Raiken, our 5th edition live play podcast that meets every Tuesday night. Last week, we had a really good session where Laramentis took the party slowly about portions of Solsarakis, the island upon which the Marble City, or the Arcane University, is situated, and introduced the party to people from his past friends, teachers that he taught with, the dean who he served under, and Jerry, who was just a great guy, and was taking them to each of the places that they wanted to go to make themselves prepared for this trip into the Feywild to rescue their long-lost, been so long since we've seen him, friend Raiken.
So sad.
So sad. Hopefully he's okay. And so, Laramentis and Leah and Tatsuya went to visit with a professor of conjuration, who promised to make them tuning forks for their to allow them to transfer between the Feywild and the material plane, or from anywhere to the Feywild and from anywhere to the material plane, technically. Yukikaze went to the library to do some research on past cataclysmic events and the rise and fall of gods, and got some interesting information. More on that. Cyrus wanted to learn more, if he could, about the Spiral Order, and got some rather cryptic answers from an exceedingly old elf named Jerry, who then charged him for the time in games of Dragon Chess, which he seems incapable of losing, because he's just really good at playing the game, this old man. And then I believe the last group was Jebble and Vendar, who wanted to get some alchemy supplies and see if they could expand their repertoire of interesting potions and such like. And they were brought to the Alchemarmory, where such materials are kept and distributed to people at the university with dispensation from people with proper clearance. And it was while they were there that Laramentis mentioned the devil, and so he appeared, and this tall Eladrin in a white cloak that is fastened around his body, a jacket or coat of some kind, concealing much of his body. His face is burned and scarred on one side, his hair is singed off and pushed to the other side, and his eyes are hidden behind thick, dark glass goggles, wrapped in leather, approached them, and was introduced as Vysandreas. This Eladrin seemed incredibly interested in the suggestions and hypotheses that Vendar and Jebble were coming up with for how to achieve a particular effect with their alchemy, and requested to borrow them from Laramentis. So they were taken away with him. Oh, good place, too. Yeah, actually, I don't hate that. Let's do it there. Let's do it there. So, I will start us off by saying that I still need to do the scene with Vysandreas for Jebble and Vendar, so summon nothing. Okay. When this eccentric acting and looking Eladrin appears, he then spirits you away further down campus, and you do find, as you were warned, that the buildings become a bit more sparse and greatly spaced. You notice that more and more they are low to the ground, as opposed to towering, like near the teleporter. And the walls appear to be a bit thicker, and while still made of stone. He brings you into what he calls his laboratory, and he takes you up to what appears to be like almost a rooftop garden, you might call it. It is on the second floor. There are no floors beyond this, and it is caged in on the side. So you can see out, but metal bars prevent you from getting, to the ground. Potentially this is also to keep things from, falling that way. And he immediately begins interacting with some runic symbols, and you witness as the stone of the area nearby transmutes itself into workbenches, and he opens up some cabinets and pulls out entire arrays of glass vials and beakers, and, titration bottles and such. Before finally turning back to you, and the whole time that you're watching him, the whole time that you're following him, and waiting for him to begin instructing you, he has this way of moving that almost feels like a puppet on strings. He has jerky movements, but he seems light on his feet at the same time, and he will just quickly move from one position to another with almost no intervening frames sometimes, and it's just the oddest thing to watch, and his personality matches this movement as he finally turns back towards you, and he seems to be leaned at a bit of an angle. You can't tell if he's favoring the leg or if he just thinks he looks cool, not standing straight. And he seems to be steepling his fingers and tapping them together, his hands wrapped in these thick black leather gloves. He says, "Oh, you've got interesting ideas. I would like to hear more of them. I think that with my knowledge of alchemy and your fresh experiences from outside of this island, we can come up with something amazing."
That sounds wonderful.
And you see, every time you say, as you say, this sounds wonderful, he smiles at you, but in the way that he smiles, the scarred half of his face doesn't really seem to move. Much like the Batman character Two-Face, just the other side of his mouth opens and curls into a smile. So, you mentioned that you wanted to try aerosolizing glass. I hear that, right?
Yeah, see, I'm particularly fond of purple worm poison, and I was hoping, but it needs to be injected, so I was hoping to come up with a way to aerosolize it so I can hit an area of effect with it.
Once again, the gloved hand returns to the good side of his mouth, and he seems to be teething at the end of one of the fingers as he says, "Yes, it is a complicated reaction you're trying to spark and control, but I think it can be done. This purple worm poison, you have some with you?"
I do.
Oh boy, he does, yeah.
It's very rare substance, as you must be aware, and very highly controlled here on the island. I recently have had my requests for it rejected. Would I be able to borrow some of yours?
If you think you can achieve what I'm looking for.
Yes. Your friend, and he is maneuvering about as he speaks, willowy and off-kilter as he talks to you, and he does take these unbalanced steps towards you and looms over Jebble, and he just sort of, like, runs a finger in the air around your profiles. Very interesting idea, and I would like to try it. We'll run the experiments separately, so as not to waste the precious elixir.
Good.
First,
It's hard to obtain.
I have some thoughts, and he will spend some time. He spends about an hour instructing you in, firstly, how these reactions alchemically occur and what the, usual components for certain effects are, focusing on this volatile, explosive effect you were trying to get. Moving on to more of this concussive force, which he thinks will be more valuable in this shattering of the glass that you're trying to achieve. You together with him, under his tutelage, mix things on his lab setup and try different combinations. Every now and then, one of the doors to this rooftop lab will, crack open, and you'll see from the shadows a portion of a face, looking out and watching, and then, quickly closing the door as something seems ready to pop. So you know that there are other people working in this building. But after about an hour, of working with him, you have the basics down, and he starts getting into the real nitty-gritty of trying to achieve this explosive effect, which results in a good deal of testing. You run several experiments together, mixing metallic and liquid components into jars, stoppering them, and watching as the reaction becomes gaseous and begins expanding until the jar pops, and then he starts talking about how this can be refined and further compressed. He puts in requests with their glass makers and their conjurers to make the things he's imagining for him. It does take a bit of time, but after a total of about 3 hours, he is pleased with the results of this, as he's able to place a vial in your hand, show you as he mixes a few things into it, has you stopper it, give it a shake, and then toss it, and when it hits the ground, it creates this area of this cloud that expands in a small area, and he has you wearing these masks that cover your eyes, nose, and mouth. They seem to be they're hooked up to hoses that run to the building. As he says, you don't want to breathe what we're creating. But he does continuously return to Jebble to dote on the fact that he inspired the idea for this. And once she's gotten to that point, he turns back to you and says, "Now then, the purple worm poison."
Alright. I'll pull out a vial of purple worm poison and I'll hand it to him.
He takes it and immediately unstoppers it and takes just a big whiff.
Yeah,
Very, very good bouquet on that. Indeed, this was bottled by one skilled in the poison arts. That person has my admiration.
Well, thank you very much. I bottled it personally.
Indeed. You must have seen the beast, didn't you? This smells
I
fresh.
did, in fact. We killed it, a large group of us, and I carved the gland out of the beast myself. It's quite the undertaking.
I would pay you well to supply me if you come into possession of more.
I certainly hope to. It is my favorite poison.
Indeed. Now then, this is fragile as poisons go. We cannot let the heat of the expansive reaction that will fling it into the air dissociate the components of the poison. He's going to tip the vial over his arm as he pulls the sleeve back from his glove. As you can see, the poison has no effect on undamaged skin, as your gnome very astutely pointed out earlier. And so, we'll use the glass to make the cuts, yes, but we must first perform magic. We must protect the poison